Doc Leesner here, the podcasting beast from the East, back with you for Wednesday's edition of Debate Amongst Friends. It is going to be a hard act to follow. The Professor John Gotti dropped gems on you yesterday with the coaching changes. It was fantastic. But Johnny, how you doing there, boy?
I mean, it wasn't that bad. I mean, I thought it was all right. It was at least a 2 out of 10. But as always, Doc, welcome back. We've missed you. For your wise man speaketh, and Doc El Idolo manifest back into the soothing sounds of your eel holes, ladies and gentlemen. The tribal chief, the Sultan of Squat, Los Tranquilo himself, has returned. But Doc, let's get into some power rankings of the National Football League.
Oh, yeah. Number one here, we got the Green Bay Packers finally getting the respect that they deserve despite Pinky Toegate, despite losing the offense.
Oh, we want to call it Pinky Toegate. I mean, I feel like they just try to find ways to discredit what the Packers are doing.
Of course.
So now there's so much emphasis on a pinky. Really? A pinky toe? Really?
But a big win over the Rams this week. Obviously, they're finally getting the respect that they deserve. Moving up from number 2 to number 1. We've been kind of watching this all season long. The disrespect finally ends.
For now.
Yeah. But number 2, we got the Arizona Cardinals, who, despite missing 2 of their top stars, their starting quarterback and they're one of the best receivers in football, and DeAndre Hopkins. The number 2 Arizona Cardinals, who, trading for Zach Ertz was huge. It was actually perfect timing. But shout out to Steve Keim, the general manager. And shout out to Cliff. I mean, he's
making it happen. He's making it happen.
He's proven the doubters wrong. They've been falling out and really taking their game to the next level.
Absolutely.
Speaking of levels, though, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at number 3, remaining at number 3. I think the acquisition or the reacquisition in the summer of Leonard Fournette obviously is proving to be worthwhile as well as valuable.
He's been an unspoken hero until, of course, the media caught wind of how well he's been playing. Of course, the 4-touchdown game didn't help either. So now everyone's looking at it as, well, man, this Leonard Fournette re-signing was amazing. Like, they know this, but
I'll be honest with you. I watched that fourth quarter run probably 30 times. Mm-hmm. I think it was like 30 or 40 yards where the last drive, and they ran that little counter play. It was such a beautiful run. And that's why we brought him in.
Yep.
So I would say it was 28 yards, actually. Yes. Really, really good run. But we'll have to wait and see how the Bucs play. Obviously, they're still battling injuries, which I feel like maybe that's just the NFL right now. We can't even use that.
That's just the NFL.
Everybody.
It's been injury gate. Everyone's been dealing with injuries, of course, now, and we'll talk about them boys in a second, but everyone's dealing with just injuries and COVID and, off the field issues.
Now, we'll say this, except for the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City Chiefs haven't been battling with injuries as much. Knock on some wood there for them.
Yeah, I'm like, you about to jinx them and about to get them real upset with you.
At 7-4, they just weren't playing great football, but the last couple of weeks they played well enough to win games. And this week was the same, beating the Cowboys in Week 11. Cowboys played a terrible game. Yeah, they played Week 11. Yeah, the Cowboys had a terrible game, but the Chiefs made the plays to win the game.
They did, and it's never about how you start the season, folks. This is what we've been trying to tell you for the past 3 seasons of this podcast. It's never about how you start the season. It's about what you
And
do
going
after
seven,
that starting point.
yeah, and going 7-4 after struggling, they did pretty good.
Yep.
Pretty good. Unlike the number 5 team, moving up one slot here from number 6, winner of 6 games in a row, the New England Patriots. Mac Jones, hindsight, looking like he should have been the number 1 overall pick.
Let's not
Go
that far. Let's not do that because, of course, that's hindsight.
Of course, but I knew Mac Jones was going to be one of the better quarterbacks. Obviously leading Alabama to the national championship. Even though he had some great weapons, I think New England's just the perfect situation for him.
Exactly.
You look at Trevor Lawrence; it's not a great situation. You look at Zach Wilson; it's not the greatest situation.
We kind of knew that from Jump Street, though.
Trey Lance, the jury's still out. We'll have to wait and see. See what happens there. And then, with Chicago, I just don't even know. Chicago doesn't know what Chicago wants to do. I think Chicago will turn the tide once they get rid of Mr. Nagy.
Yeah, not going to happen, folks. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to all of our listeners in Chicago that doesn't like to hear that, but it's not going to happen for a bit.
But number 6, we got the Buffalo Bills. Losing Tre'Davious White, obviously on a non-contact knee injury, getting blown out by the Colts and then coming back and beating another injury-ridden team in the Saints. I mean, we'll have to see. NFC teams, I think, are coming into Buffalo. I know that they have to play a game, I believe, next week versus the Bucs, so that'll be the true test. I know a lot of people talked about the Colts not winning against a winning football team. Buffalo not only has to beat the teams that they should beat, but they also have to come in and really play a good game against a team with a winning record.
Exactly.
So we're
and they'll get that test this weekend as they face off against the number 5 team, which is the Patriots.
Exactly, which is important in the AFC East race, which I think, we'll get to those. We'll get to those.
We'll get to those.
Yeah, we'll get to those. I'm looking to choose the Patriots already. I'm gonna tell you right now. But number 7, we got the Cincinnati Bengals moving up from 15. That's 8 slots, Johnny.
Kitty goes me out.
Getting the 41-10 win over the Pittsburgh Steelers, who it seems like they're about to head into a rebuild, which is very odd. But it's time to sit Ben Roethlisberger down and say, hey, listen, you're going to need some fries and a shake with that burger, and it's over. It's over, but the Cincinnati Bengals defense has been playing well all game. Joe Mixon has been playing great. Joe Burrow obviously been playing great. EFL numbers, only having 4 incompletions on 24 attempts. That's EFL level right there, ladies and gentlemen. But we'll wait and see what happens. I just keep speaking EFL into existence. I feel like I just bring it back and make it better than ever. But
we can incorporate that into the show.
Yeah, I might have to bring it back. I'm not sure. People keep asking if it's coming back. I don't know. Maybe it's coming back. But
that person
what's not coming back,
folks.
What's not coming back right now are them boy fans, the Cowboy fans. They were chirping very loud at the beginning of the season.
They're number 8 in the power rankings, by the way, folks.
They're number 8. They were as high as number 2 or 3, I believe.
Yep.
Cowboy fans were riding high even after I'll say the loss of the Bucs in game 1 was okay. They showed a lot of flash, a lot of promise. And then it just started to kind of trickle up and down. Dak, I think you even said that Dak was going to have like a great passing number, but even his productivity has gone down.
Yep.
Zeke's down. The only bright spot for this team, 2 bright spots.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Parsons.
Yep.
Great draft pick. He's been phenomenal. I think they said he broke the Cowboys sack record, I believe, for rookies, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Parsons. And Tony Pollard, who I think is their best offensive weapon right now. They need to run him more. He's been outperforming Zeke on multiple levels. Obviously, the big kick return last week, almost putting them back in a position to come back and win the game. Get that guy the ball. That's
they're not going to do it.
The other team I disagree with here,
I
with the
mean, we both
rankings.
disagree with this one.
We do. And that's number 9, moving up 4 slots for a abysmal game on Sunday night. That's the Baltimore Ravens. And I love Lamar Jackson. Don't get me
See,
wrong.
the,
And
the,
we
the
always talk
problem is
about it.
just the fact that they won the game, which is why they went up these many slots.
I don't know about 4 though.
But I wouldn't say 4. In fact, I wouldn't have moved them at all.
Yeah, just let them stay 13, maybe 12 tops. 12.
I wouldn't have
tops.
moved them at all.
I think the issue is that some of the teams lost, and maybe that's what it is, and maybe when we looked at this before the show, it's like maybe it's not the fact that they won, it's more the fact that the teams below them all lost, and they all lost pretty convincingly, except for the Vikings. I don't think
Okay,
the
I'm
Vikings
like the
lost.
Vikings and the Colts didn't lose convincingly, and same thing with the Rams too.
Well, the Rams lost convincingly. I mean, it was 36-28, but
It's an
I was
8-point game.
convinced.
That's a 1-score game.
I was convinced early that this game was over.
Mm.
Like the Titans, 36-13.
That's pretty
they dropped.
convincing. But of course, they're also injury ridden too, which is why I made the argument about, well, but you have Lamar Jackson. Like the problem is that they talk so much about Lamar Jackson for the first 10 weeks.
True.
And then he had this game, and we only had one line about Lamar Jackson now.
I'm interested to see how the quarterback ranking looks later on this week.
Oh, I can't wait to talk about that on Friday.
Of course. But number 10, we got the San Francisco 49ers still battling. Shout out to Kyle Shanahan having focused in. They're 6-5. They have a chance to NFC West this and kind of go on, but we'll have to wait and see. But notable drops here, we have the Los Angeles Rams dropping from number 9 to number 11. The Tennessee Titans, as we mentioned, dropping from 8 to 12. Obviously, with the Indianapolis Colts losing to the Bucs, they dropped from 13 to 12. And those Minnesota Vikings dropped from number 10 to number 14. But speaking of rankings, we did have the NCAA NCAA basketball releasing their rankings this past week. Of course, we had some games that did play. But number 1, we had the Duke Blue Devils. We had number 2, Purdue. Number 3, Gonzaga. Number 4, Baylor. Number 6, UCLA. Number 5, UCLA. Number 6, Villanova. Number 7, Texas. Number 8, Kansas. Number 9, Kentucky. And rounding out at number 10, we got Kansas. Last night, we had Duke versus Ohio State, in which was the first game that I had an opportunity to watch college basketball. Seeing how the Duke Blue Devils, who were 7-0 coming in, versus a 4-2 Ohio State game at Ohio State, which is full. Who cares about COVID, right? But this is the first game that I had an opportunity to watch the Duke Blue Devils play, and I was actually really blown away by the performance of Wendell Moore Jr. I thought his game took a huge step forward. I like the moxie of Trevor Keels, great player. But I think Paolo Banchero is kind of a great player. He kind of comes as advertised. Didn't play great statistically, 14.5 rebounds. He went 4 for 14, 1 from 3 from behind the arc. But I think defensively, this is probably one of the best Duke teams I've seen in a while. The way they fly around the ball is tremendous, but we just couldn't get it done. I think the one thing that happened last night that wasn't really the one thing that they did that really upset me was that they stopped attacking the basket and started selling for mid-range jumpers. I thought that was one of those things that they should have continued to go to the well. Ohio State was struggling to stop them in the paint. They were struggling, and we were getting to the free throw line. And in the second half, somewhere along the line, we stopped attacking the basket. And I believe that hurt us tremendously. But outside of that, I love what I saw from Mark Williams. I love what I saw from Theo John in his 15 minutes. Joey Baker came in and hit some pretty decent shots. But really, the stars of this team, Wendell Moore Jr. and Paolo Banchero, I think, are two players I'm looking to see in next year's draft. I think they're going to be really, really major contributors. But I don't want to take away from Ohio State and their big EJ Liddell, 14 points, 14 rebounds, 6 assists. Really, really post player, which you don't really see a lot. His back to the basket moves were fantastic. The only issue that Ohio State had yesterday was their free throws. They went 50%. And I think if they hit those free throws, this game would have been closer earlier. But without those free throws, it just didn't look good. Zed Key had 20 points, 3 rebounds. And then you have Cedric Russell with 12 points, 3 rebounds. So it really was, a matter of getting the ball to EJ Liddell, letting him work against Mark Williams, letting him work against Theo John, putting them in foul trouble early. They just couldn't make free throws, and that was huge. But Duke right now, until the new poll comes out there, number 1, I assume they'll drop, probably possibly down to, the lower. I don't know. I mean, Gonzaga was number 1 and they lose to Duke. They dropped a couple slots. So Duke may drop out of the top 10. We'll have to wait and see. But I knew the one thing that we have to wait and see what happens. This is championship weekend. We got the top 6 teams in the NCAA FBS, the college football top 5. We have the Georgia Bulldogs, the Michigan Wolverines, the Cincinnati Bearcats, the Alabama Crimson Roll Damn Tide, the number 5 team, Oklahoma State Cowboys, and number 6, Notre Dame Fighting Irish, losing their coach after this season. Will they have the opportunity to compete for a championship game? We have to wait and see. So notable games that we're going to be following. Baylor will be going to Oklahoma State. And this is kind of a win, and you could possibly be in for Oklahoma State. Great opportunity for them because Georgia and Alabama play each other in Alabama. It's going to be a very, very interesting game on Saturday. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Also, Houston going to Cincinnati. Will Cincinnati remain undefeated? Houston's coming in at 11-1. This is an opportunity for Cincinnati to stamp their placement into the playoffs. They can move up to number 3, maybe number 2, depending on how this all shakes out, because you also have Michigan heading to Iowa, and Iowa is just one of those teams that could possibly derail Michigan if they're not careful. If they blew their proverbial gas beating Ohio State and let Iowa, lull them to sleep and get knocked out of the playoffs. We'll have to wait and see. But I guess the big debate here is what happens with Georgia and Alabama. If Alabama wins, how far does Georgia fall? If Georgia wins, how far does Alabama fall? Does Alabama fall outside of the playoffs? Who moves up? Does Oklahoma State move up? If they don't win by a certain amount of points, the college football committee has done a great job. I don't want to say protecting Alabama, but they've done a great job making sure that these powerhouses stay in the playoff race. But in the end of the day, you have Georgia, you have Alabama. They've played great all season long. It'll be hard if Alabama beats Georgia. It'll be tough to say, hey, we're going to remove Georgia from the top 4. I just can't see it happening. But we'll have to wait and see. Lastly, shout out to my Rockets. Shout out to Houston. winners of 3 straight. After we broke the news last week that Stephen Silas was on the hot seat, they've come back to win 3, and now potentially having a potential trade partner for John Wall with the Knicks for Kemba or maybe a third team. We'll have to wait and see. But outside of that, we're going to have a great rest of the week, a great weekend of college sports. So be sure to tune in, tomorrow, and we'll make sure to go over the Thursday night game as well as some more information. But I know you heard this podcast on your favorite podcast platform. But if you didn't, you can always go to our website at www.debateamongstfriends.com to review this episode as well as all the previous. Be sure to tune in tomorrow as we go over the news, the analysis, and the reads. I knew the one thing that we have to wait and see what happens. This is championship weekend. We got the top 6 teams in the NCAA FBS, the college football top 5. We have the Georgia Bulldogs, the Michigan Wolverines, the Cincinnati Bearcats, the Alabama Crimson Roll Damn Tide, the number 5 team, Oklahoma State Cowboys, and number 6, Notre Dame Fighting Irish, losing their coach after the season. Will they have the opportunity to compete for a championship game? We have to wait and see. So notable games that we're going to be following. Baylor will be going to Oklahoma State. And this is kind of a win, and you could possibly be in for Oklahoma State. Great opportunity for them because Georgia and Alabama play each other in Alabama. It's going to be a very, very interesting game on Saturday. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Also, Houston going to Cincinnati. Will Cincinnati remain undefeated? Houston's coming in at 11-1. This is an opportunity for Cincinnati to stamp their placement into the playoffs. They can move up to number 3, maybe number 2, depending on how this all shakes out. Because you also have Michigan heading to Iowa, and Iowa is just one of those teams that could possibly derail Michigan if they're not careful. If they blew their proverbial gas beating Ohio State and let Iowa, lull them to sleep and get knocked out of the playoffs. We'll have to wait and see. But I guess the big debate here is what happens with Georgia and Alabama. If Alabama wins, how far does Georgia fall? If Georgia wins, how far does Alabama fall? Does Alabama fall outside of the playoffs? Who moves up? Does Oklahoma State move up? If they don't win by a certain amount of points, the college football committee has done a great job. I don't want to say protecting Alabama, but they've done a great job making sure that these powerhouses stay in the playoff race. But in the end of the day, you have Georgia, you have Alabama. They've played great all season long. It would be hard if Alabama beats Georgia. It'd be tough to say, hey, we're going to remove Georgia from the top 4. I just can't see it happening. But we'll have to wait and see. Lastly, shout out to my Rockets. Shout out to Houston, winners of 3 straight. After we broke the news last week that Stephen Silas was on the hot seat, They've come back to win 3, and now potentially having a potential trade partner for John Wall with the Knicks for Kemba or maybe a third team. We'll have to wait and see. But outside of that, we're going to have a great rest of the week, a great weekend of college sports. So be sure to tune in, tomorrow, and we'll make sure to go over the Thursday night game as well as some more information. But I know you heard this podcast on your favorite podcast platform. But if you didn't, you can always go to our website at www.debateamongstfriends.com to review this episode as well as all the previous. Be sure to tune in tomorrow as we go over the news, the analysis, and the reads.